Hi everyone and welcome back to Chess for Charity. In this video, I'm going to show you an amazing puzzle where it's white to play and win. Despite the overwhelming material advantage from black, 36 points up, white can still win in this position. Super crazy. Take a second, see if you can solve it. It's really fun. I think there are some challenges along the way. Even if you get the central idea, it's hard to find the right path. While you're thinking about that, let me ask you to subscribe if you have not yet already. Half of the income that I earn in this channel goes directly to charity. So every like, every subscriber, every member, all of that, half of it goes to charity. So thank you so much for those of you who are subscribed. Let's get into it. So you might recognize right away, this knight is going to want to land a check because this king is pretty blocked off, right? You might notice that right away. So the king really can go back and forth. So let's talk about the obvious things. If you were to do this, if you go to check, obviously that's bad. Why is that bad? Your knight's hanging. Don't do that. So the first move I think is relatively obvious, right? Knight f4. Okay. But now it gets a little tricky. So the king moves. So let me ask you, where do you go? You want to land a check. So do you go here or do you go here? One of these is a win. One of them is not a win. So if you go knight d3, this is actually not going to work out. And I'll explain in full detail in a minute. But briefly, the king can go this way, and you kind of run out of checks. So if I go to check here, my knight gets swiped. Don't want that. And if I go back, it might seem like I can just return to the position I'm in. But I'll explain when I show you the correct variation why this doesn't work. And it all hinges around that pawn that I just captured. So keep that in mind. So if you back up, the correct first move is not to take this pawn, but to instead land a fork on e6. We don't really care that it's a fork. We're just trying to continue checking this king. So now the king has to move. And what do? Pretty obviously, you take this with check. The king is just forced to oscillate back and forth. But when do you stop taking stuff? And how do you end this puzzle, you might wonder? So king goes here. Great. Take the bishop. Why not? King is forced to go here. Do you continue this and take the rook? What do you think? The answer should be obviously no, right? Because I need the knight. If I do this, the rook just takes me and now I am down. This is mate in 5 for black. Not cool. So you don't want to give up your knight. Instead, let's circle this thing back. Knight c7, check. Again, these squares are all blocked off. And these pawns are going down the board, by the way, in case that's not clear. So no captures. King has to go back. But how do you end this? Knight e6, check. Okay. King goes back. What do you do from here? Well, let's keep checking the king. And now, here's the critical detail. The king has to move. Now, where does this king go is the next thing. Because if you keep checking, you're going to run out of checks like that other variation I just shared. So the answer, I just showed it, the answer is that the king wants to stay attached to these squares to block off this escape square. So, if you were to go here, for example, e6, this is not a good move because the knight can kick you away and now you're forced out. And then that gives black time to play something like d5. An escape plan is what will happen. And now you can't generate a check against this king. If only you could place your knight like magically right here and this knight wasn't here, you'd cover everything. Doesn't quite work that way. So the king has to stay attached to this square. And the only way to do it is to go to e4. So like I said, if you go to e6, it leads to that check. And e4, you'll notice this pawn is preventing this pawn from being moved. Remember way earlier I said I'd explain it? If the knight were to take this pawn and run back around like I was sharing, all the way back, this pawn would not be here, which means this pawn could check you and then take your knight. So that's why in the other variation, you do not take this d3 pawn. Okay, so you're threatening checkmate. So what are they going to do to stop you? Well, d5 check. Okay, I need to cover this escape square. So king e5. Okay, I want this. How do I stay connected to this? They have a couple of last hopes, which is bishop f6. I actually like this move. It's a great defense. If I take this, what happens? The king can breathe, and they're not getting checkmated anymore. Right? They get out of this trap, which is why you do not take the bishop. Instead, you're focused on d6. You just play king e6 and say, I'm trying to mate you. So now the king is their king, the black king, is kind of running out of squares, and they're running out of checks as a team. Check with the knight. Now again, you want to stay fixated on this square. So don't take the bishop. That would be bad. You can't go here anyway, right? It's not a legal move. You can't go here. So you have only one move that's not taking this bishop. Well, and of course, you don't want to go backwards. Okay, now what? Well, now, no matter what black does next, I have checkmate on the next move. So I decided to pick this move because I think it's the most aesthetic. That is checkmate. Isn't that a crazy puzzle? So I want to go back to that variation really quickly just to make sure it makes sense to you. If I do this and I take this pawn first, this is a mistake. If I do this and I go all the way through that variation again, I'll go fast because I already explained this. Like this, like that, all the way back. I can no longer play king e4 because if I do that, they can move this pawn and I am lost. The whole detail is that that pawn that was here that I captured was a blocker for this d4 pawn. Notice that little nuance? Isn't that kind of amazing? Everything else I think is pretty straightforward, right? Even another kind of cool thought, even if you did this and they didn't take you and they moved here, you still would not be able to win because you have to play knight e4, they get out, and then what? You run out of checks. Even if you could check, it's not enough. They can leave your piece hanging. I kind of thought that was funny. Now, you don't even want to do that, but where else could you check? So that's the way. The way forward is to first land that check, run the king in circles, and then be very careful here. King e4 is the way to win. I think I'm going to put an exclamation point on this. And then they just try to throw in checks to divert you away. You just stay trained onto this d6 square. You're saying, I'm not giving that up. Move. They check you again. You stay connected. And importantly, this is not mate because the knight is covering, which means you only have one square to do it. So that's it. Bang, and that's a win. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I think it's really cool. I just like these kinds of puzzles. Look at this ending. Come on. Where do you get something like that? Super nice. That's it for watching. That's it for the video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, like I said, be sure to like all that great stuff. Until next time, see you soon. Bye.